Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host right here.
Eddie Nicholas, what up, beautiful people, and welcome to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. We are so glad that you decided to tune in and join us today. Adam Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Give folks the little rundown of what we do here, and then I know we need to jump into some topics, and one that is really, really getting to me, and I know we're going to discuss it later, is about net neutrality. And the reason why I say that, because we talked about that last week, I believe, and lo and behold, I turned on TV One with Roland Martin, and there they are talking about the topic.
Well, see, let us take a moment to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. We're live where?
91.6 FM.
And on the web at dwobmusicradio.com. All right, let's jump right out in front. Right now, it's all about net neutrality and what's happening at the FCC. You see, here in the States, we have a transition of power now with the new administration coming in. With a new administration means new rules. The new rules right now are all focused on net neutrality, this idea that data needs to be treated the same. So if you're an internet service provider and you're working with a content provider, you can't do things like block the competitor's data transmission, you can't slow the competitor's data transmission down in any way, and you can't pay prioritize. That means because a content provider pays the internet service provider, doesn't mean that they go first in line in terms of the data transmission. Net neutrality says that when you click your mouse and you access the internet, that it's accessed at the real time, that data, not because of some sort of arbitrary paid for buffering type system. Right now, though, there's a lot of talk because, unfortunately, we start to uncover more and more of the folks that are connected that probably shouldn't be connected. First out of the gate, though, is this idea that with net neutrality being in limbo, the new chairman, Ajit Pai of the FCC, is quick at work right now trying to allow these content providers like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, a bunch of them. He's trying to let them do their thing. What does that mean? He's allowing them to offer these binge unlimited data plans to customers, offer these tier things. The more you pay, the faster your connection. The less you pay, the slower your connection. And so Ajit Pai, the head of the FCC, is encouraging these companies to begin creating these kinds of models that they never could create before during the Obama time, because the FCC predecessor, his name was Thomas Wheeler, was about net neutrality, which doesn't allow these content providers to do what they're allowed to do right now.
He had restrictions.
Yeah, because he understood that what happens when you let this all occur is a bottleneck of the data starts to happen, where those with means are able to have a faster internet connection than those without. Why is that important? Because in our lower income and our rural communities, they have a harder and harder time accessing quality speed on the internet. So what happens over time is when this happens, it basically slows down to a grinding halt the idea of accessing internet in poor neighborhoods if you can't afford it. And that's not fair. Net neutrality was trying to keep things fair. At least Tom Wheeler was arguing that. Now with him out and Ajit Pai in, it creates this new thing. Well, the latest news and the latest goings on is that now we're thinking maybe we could turn to our civil liberty groups to help us in trying to fight to maintain net neutrality, especially if these civil liberty groups tend to favor communities of lower income or more rural communities. So case in point, we're talking about groups like the NAACP. We're talking about groups like the Organizations for Chinese Americans, or at least that's what they were formerly known as. Groups like that, the Urban League, other civil liberty groups out here in the States, we're looking to them and other organizations like them to advocate on our behalf. Who is us or who is our? We're talking about independent artists, independent citizens that want more equality around these things like data transmission. Well, it turns out that we're having a big problem here because...
And what is that problem?
That problem is that the civil liberties groups that I've just mentioned, NAACP, Urban League, and the others, they're all been funded by telecom.
Well, you know, Them strange bedfellows when it comes to money.
Listen, we have posted an article at our website at freedomradiohour.com where we detail that all of these groups are now in cahoots and have been for many years with the telecom industry. You see, the NAACP, I know, right? The NAACP and other organizations like them, they sort of maintain a portfolio of concern, if you will, a portfolio of the things that they're going to be concerned about. So if you're talking the NAACP, they're very concerned with things like discriminatory practices around hiring at high-tech companies in Silicon Valley. That's something that's very important to the NAACP. So if they're funded by the telecom industry and their big takeaway from that is, okay, telecom, you have to make sure that you don't engage in any sort of discriminatory practices around hiring folks, that you have enough people at the top level, middle, and bottom that are diverse in terms of their racial makeup, etc., etc. Telecom goes, sure, we'll do that. By the way, we're trying to do this little pesky thing called dismantling net neutrality. Can you support our position on that? To which groups like NAACP says, okay, it's not in our portfolio of concern. Will you make sure that you don't mess with our discriminatory practice little agreement we had? I'm like, sure, we'll keep that. Great. We'll go ahead and support whatever position you have on this thing because it's not in our portfolio of concern. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about what happens when you have this sort of intertwining, braiding, this sort of laying in bed with strange bedfellows occurring around net neutrality, laws, and our own civil liberty groups. Let's take a break. Where?
I'm a gag. 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What a beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM. I'm your co-host, Eddie Nicholas, and I'm sitting up here with my fantastic partner, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live at Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. We're on Capital Radio, as my man said, but we're also on the web at dwmusicradio.com. Thanks for coming back and joining us. Before we broke, we were breaking down a big revelation that's occurred here in the States. You see, with the new administration now, we have a new head of the FCC. He's trying to change the rules around how we treat data transmission on the internet. Up until now, we had this idea of net neutrality where the data was created and treated equally. You couldn't pay to get ahead of the line. You couldn't find another means to have the data transmission happen faster for you and slower for others. Now, Ajit Pai, the head of the FCC, has changed all of those things, and he's canceled any inquiries that were happening before he took power around dealing with this thing called...
What do you mean canceled?
Well, before he came into power, his predecessor, Thomas Wheeler, had started formal inquiries into T-Mobile and their binge unlimited data deals. Why? Because they argued that it violated net neutrality rules. Because in order for T-Mobile to offer this sort of binge on unlimited data deal, they had to engage in out of one of those three rules, which is no throttling, no blocking, and no paid prioritization. With T-Mobile doing that, they're violating that. So Thomas Wheeler and the Obama administration started formal inquiries into T-Mobile's business model around this binge data dealing, right? But now that Thomas Wheeler is out and Mr. Ajit Pai is in, the first order of business was to cancel all of those inquiries, because now they're going to promote the very thing that they were concerned about with T-Mobile, right? So they've also given the green light to AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, and others. What we've uncovered now is that when we turn to our civil liberty groups to try to help and defend this, why should they care? Well, because we are talking about lower income communities, poor communities, rural communities that'll directly be affected by the dismantling of net neutrality rules. Why do we say that? Because it only stands to reason that those with the means, those with money, are going to access faster service than those that don't. Over time, it will create naturally a bottleneck feel, a feel where those at the top core get that fast internet on the backs of those at the poor community end who get very little to slow down speed. We're talking like dial-in back in the day type speed.
But you know, there has got to be, because I cannot see the NAACP of or organizations. But then again, like we said, money makes strange bedfellows.
It does.
But at the same token, you would think, well, my God, let's trust that if the FCC and Mr. Pie is going through all of this, as I call it, situation to dismantle stuff, then again, like the Obamacare, what are you going to replace it with? You want to repeal, but what are you going to replace? Because there has got to be something in place for those families that cannot afford. Is there going to be something whereas those people that are able to get those binge packages and all of that, are those companies going to be responsible for trickling down money to make sure that broadband and services are affordable and made available to those communities? In other words, is that part of the back end of that story with them wanting to if you want to get rid of something, you got to replace it with something?
Well, I think this is a really, really important point that you're bringing up. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to unpack with what you just said, though, so I want to take it bit by bit if I can remember it all. I think the first thing to really say is that while the Obamacare, the ACA is a healthcare matter, there needs to be something done when you replace, when you repeal, you have to replace, right? But when we're talking about internet connection and phone speed, now you're starting to get a little bit different because the political side starts to get inflamed because there's a different idea. Yes, and then also there's an idea about what is a necessity and what is not. And further, what is the government to subsidize and what is the government not to? To your very point, originally with Tom Wheeler at the head of the FCC, they were beginning talks to apply the phone carriers USF program. That's a universal service fund. They took a little penny, they charged you a few pennies extra, everybody, and they took that pool of money and they put it towards rural and low-income communities in terms of infrastructure, creating better lines for them to have faster internet on the backs of those of us who paid a few pennies more. That only applied to phone carriers. So what Thomas Wheeler's and the administration were recommending is that they were recommending that it be adopted to broadband internet service so that things like net neutrality and things, okay, so if it was switched up, it wouldn't matter because the government would be subsidizing these poorer, more rural communities.
There would still be funding into the program.
Right, there would be this sort of pool, a USF type pool for broadband. Well, that would have worked in a Tom Wheeler administration for FCC, but now in an SG Pie administration, they're canceling those inquiries into the binge data deals. They're allowing these companies to come forward, and they have no plans to repeal nor replace any of those funds, because you realize that even Tom Wheeler hadn't gotten to the point where USF adoptability was enacted and they pushed forward. In other words, they were taking our little pennies to pool together to give poor communities access to the internet. They hadn't even started there. So do you think that Ajit Pai is going to pick that ball back up, or he's just going to let it roll away? So this is why these things become really problematic. Let's take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Apple and what they're trying to do to break into the TV business game on the back of subscribers. So we'll talk about that when we come back.
Oh, it's all a money game.
It is.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan.
DWAPmusicradio.com.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live at Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. I'm your co-host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host here,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome back. Adam, that was a wonderful, informative segment on net neutrality, but then you hit me with some, what is Apple up to?
Well, you know that Apple, let's go way,
because they're always up to something.
They're always up to something. When we go to the beginning of time in terms of digital music and how it came up, Apple was at that forefront because they were off trying to sell a device, a computer device, and they needed to fill it with good little content pieces. So they hit up the labels, they made a little model, made a little store for themselves, and they took charge of how much they were going to charge customers to fill their devices so they could sell more devices. Well, Apple is at it again. Apple is now jumping into the TV business. You see, Apple is very keen to try to do things like break into the Chinese music business market that we've covered before in a previous episode, and how difficult that is when you already have huge companies over there holding things down. So it's hard for you if you're Apple or Spotify to try to make inroads in these other parts of the world. So you got to think even more diversely, if you will. So Apple, noting that, has started to jump into the TV business. What are they doing? Well, their intention is to boost their music subscription business. Okay, remember we talked about how Spotify was at roughly 30 million subscribers. Apple Music was at 15 million subscribers. So Apple is trying to see what they can do to be more of a competitor to Spotify. So now they're jumping into the TV game. The head of their particular outfit division, his name is Eddie Q. Mr. Q divulged this information at the last media conference that they tend to have around these things. He was saying that they're going to be launching an original series called Planet of the Apps, which I think was hilarious. Yes, but it's evidently very millennial, very young, very fresh, right? And so what they're doing...
And you can only watch it if you have the app.
Thank you. Because everything nowadays is all about the exclusivity. And they're trying to get younger with it. So they're thinking that a show like the Planet of the Apps that they're in the process of producing and putting up, they think that will help them to boost their music business. Why are we talking about TV and music together? Well, Apple, like we said, is really keen on trying to up that 15 million subscriber base to bring it up closer to 30 million, like Spotify.
Now, question.
And they can't just do it with music.
I know Amazon fit up in there somewhere.
Well, Amazon is new. You remember that Amazon just started their service.
But they're making a killing with their television. Is it Netflix? Am I getting them all mixed up? Amazon, Netflix, all of them folks.
Well, let's take a second to at least acknowledge who we're currently dealing with. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. Amazon also has Echo, which is their music arm. To boost that ecosystem, they launched an Echo speaker. That Echo speaker accesses all that streaming that Spotify and them do, but at $3.99 a month. So remember I was
telling... $3.99 or $3.99?
No, $3.99 a month.
Oh, and that's such a low cost that folks would not figure. Well, I can pay $4 to get all of this. That's how they get you.
Because Spotify is $9.99 a month. Tidal was like at $10.99 because they claim that high end experience. Poor Tidal was trying to deal with their own dramas around subscribers. They were 1 million to Apple and Spotify's 15 and 30 million respectively. Anyway, going back to this, so Apple is really trying to, it's interesting, this guy Eddie Q, when he was asked, he said, don't get it twisted, I'm paraphrasing, don't get it twisted, we're not buying up shows. What does that mean? That he wants to send a message out that don't look to us like as if we're trying to become the next Netflix, the next Amazon, the next Hulu. We're not. We're trying to boost our subscriber base, our music subscription base, and we know that we have to develop and offer more than just music.
So they want to do basically original content that is privy to that app.
But when we start going down this little road of specificity, if you will, it all sounds the same. In other words, how are you not becoming a Netflix, Apple, if you're launching original TV shows? Isn't that what Netflix is?
That's why I posed my question, because we already have what do you call it? Companies in place that already have that type of format that these other companies are pulling
There's
off
a lot
of.
now.
Yeah, and they're just trying to, as we call it, repackage it.
Right. But it's funny, though. It's not like as if Apple's trying to take a chunk out of Netflix's customer base.
Of course not.
Not now. Not at the moment. They're trying to see what they could do to up their subscriber base. But I think there's something here that's that they're not telling us, and they're going to tell us over the next few months what they're really after. My hunch is that they are trying to become a Netflix and Apple Music in one. It only makes sense because if you think about it, none of those programs, none of those services offer it all in one. We have been talking episode upon episode about how there seems to be this trend toward offering everything in one house, everything in one interface, everything in one experience. That everything in one model, we're going to see more and more of that from 2017, 2018 and beyond. From your apps, you're going to be able to buy the clothes that the artist is wearing just by a click of a button.
Which you already can.
Yes, you can. You can buy the tour ticket, get the clothes and all that, all from one little thing. But you're going to get more and more and more of that, especially when you start to think about watching a new TV show and you could buy the blazer that the actor's wearing. You could buy the music
and,
that's being
and with
heard.
The companies that you already have named, such as Hulu, they already have those apps that you can go into on your telephone.
But not all together.
Not all together.
Right. That's all the time we have. On the next episode, we're going to talk more about this because I think it's very important to bring it home how all of this relates to the music business, because all of our music nowadays is streamed, which means you need internet connection. So you've got to think about what that's going to do to your base if less and less people are able to get the speed of the internet to be able to stream the content. We're talking lower income, rural. There's a lot to it. And what if we turn this around and all of a sudden, out of some requirement, all of a sudden we're the losing because it's just some switch up in the math. In other words, we got to be careful that in one fell swoop that it doesn't turn against us, this idea of the more you pay, the faster connection you got, because it could bite us in the whatever you call it.
In the keister.
Thank you. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Tune in to EddieNicholas.com, DJAdamCruz.com, and listen to all of our wonderful music. And definitely tell a friend, tell a foe, tell everyone you know that the music business news game is right here. Where?
91.6 FM,
Yes.
the Heartbeat of Sudan. And
DWildMusicRadio.com. Peace and love, y'all. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. See you next time.